There it is.
Okay. Thank you everyone for being here. I know the weather is nice and I know it's summer. People are busy, listings, buyers, and thank you for taking the time to be here. And thank you, Cathy, for joining us for Power Hour this morning. I know how busy you are. Just so you know, guys, even now has to put her phone on airplane mode because things are coming in. I normally do an introduction, but the last two times I decided that what about everybody to introduce themselves because they know most of it of themselves than I could bring to the table. And I think it's a very nice one this morning because Cathy, you had a previous full career in such a different domain of entertainment that people don't know about. Not everybody knows about that. And I would love to hear it more. So if you can introduce yourself, first of all, thank you for being here. Introduce yourself, give us a little bit of background other than real estate and how you got to real estate.
Okay. So I'm Kathy Korpi. My first love, other than my kids, but I guess they weren't really my first love. So my first love was always music. And as long as you spell my name right, if you go into iTunes or Spotify, you'll find my last CD. So it was always my dream to make my living in the music industry. But some of you may or may not know it's very difficult to make a really good living in the music industry. So the first real success I had and the first real big business I was involved in, believe it or not, I was in a multi-level. My first husband and I were in Amway, and we had a huge business with over 10,000 people underneath us. So we, I have a unique perspective on building a sales business and building success, and it's not what you would think it is. But so we built that business from nothing. We were just a couple of young people with really no credibility and no money living on Alpha-Ghettios and ramen noodles. And the first house we ever bought when we were 3 years into our Amway business. So the first home I ever purchased was 12,500 square feet on 25 acres with a 16-car garage. And that was my start into the business world. We owned five companies, all of which sort of spawned out from that. We had a computer software development company, an event management company. We put on huge functions, and then two other private companies. When I got into the music industry, I thought, okay, this is my time to go and have my dream. And I traveled and I sang and I did fairs and festivals and I did some really cool things. There's a song on my Ferris Wheel CD that Martina McBride produced and sang background vocals on. If you're familiar with the Canadian country music industry, I did a duet with Jason McCoy from the Roadhammers, and I've sung in front of 72,000 people in the Atlanta Dome. Um, but by the time my boys were getting ready to go to university, their dad, all three of my kids have the same dad, and their dad just doesn't help with anything. So I didn't want them to have debt, and music was paying the bills, but it wasn't going to put my kids through university. So I got into real estate really just to put my two sons, my daughter was already gone from the house, but I just wanted to put my kids through university. So I thought, well, if I could just do this for a couple years, you might wonder what happened to all those companies that bought that big house. My first husband decided that another life was more interesting with another person, and eventually he bankrupted everything. Um, and so I also have another perspective about how important it is to build legacy and to build investment, which is what brought me to real. I mean, I could do a whole talk on why I wish I'd found real 8 years earlier, but because it can come and it can go. And so I built real estate just to put my kids through school. I really didn't necessarily think I was going to stay. Um, and then I stayed. And here I am. I think I'm in my 13th year. And I certainly don't know it all. And that's why I go to events like Velocity and everything else I can possibly cram into my brain because I think that always evolving is so important. But here I am, just a normal person who deals with imposter syndrome every single day, no matter how successful she is or is not. And I'm just thankful to be really with each and every one of you on this call because I honestly think I could personally learn something from every conversation I would have with any of you. So thankful to be here.
Thank you. And thank you, Cathy, for being so open. I think it's very rare that we talk with entrepreneurs that share the other side of being an entrepreneur, how you can have everything and how you can lose everything, and how important it is, how you build your business. So the fact that you are so vulnerable with us, I can't appreciate you more for doing that with us today. Um, and I want to start by asking you, when you were in that position, you wanted to put the kids in school and you wanted to be in this business. What was it about this business that you saw an opportunity for um, providing for your kids in a short period of time? What was it that an element of business coming from such a business background that you saw this is a way of making money?
Honestly, it had been so long since I had had a job working for someone else, although during the process of my divorce from my first husband took over 10 years to settle and about $750,000 of legal fees. But there was a period of time during that for a short stint, I had to go get a job working for somebody. And I was working for a company where I was kind of running their company, but I was treated like an employee. And I did it. My lawyer said, you need to have a job for the next 6 months. I don't care what you do. I don't care if you bag groceries, just go get a job. And and I it was a reminder to me that after you've been an entrepreneur, it's very hard to go back to working for someone else. And one of the things that I've always believed from the beginning is that you will either work very hard for what you want, or you will work very hard for what you to avoid what you don't want, because every decision has a consequence. So I looked at real estate and I said, okay, I can be in business for myself. I didn't have any illusions that I would have all this control. It's pretty funny when people say, "Oh, real estate agents, you're so in control of your schedule." They are so full of crap. But the I didn't have illusions that I would have control. But really, I really enjoyed working with people before I got in real estate. Before I got in real estate, I really enjoyed working with people. And I just thought, you know what, I loved the creativity of it. I really love promoting what I believe in. I think when you believe in something, I can't take listings that I don't believe in. I have done it in the past. That's another whole topic. Because I can't promote what I don't believe. There's another whole conversation on pricing there too. I talk to sellers about, if I can't break down for a buyer agent how we arrived at this listing price, then I can't sell your home. Not for that number anyways. So for me, it was just about being able to go out and be passionate about something. I loved interior design. I furnished that 12,500 square foot house from empty. We moved in with one couch and one table. And the first delivery of furniture I had delivered, and that was in 1995, April 1st of 1995. The first delivery of furniture I had was $100,000 of furniture. That'd be like ordering $250,000 of furniture now. And it was so much fun to do all that. And I thought, oh, I can stage houses and I can talk to people and I can go show houses. And so it just seemed like a natural fit. I knew I wasn't going to go back to a job.
How old were you when you entered the real estate world?
Hmm.
If I may ask that, because you only
Actually,
started 2 years ago.
no, I think I'm one of the few women that it's not. Actually, Derek and I were talking at philosophy, and I said something about my age, and I said, like, I'm not ashamed of my age. I'm 59,
Love it. Love
and
it.
so I started in my 40s, and sometimes I see all the youngins, and I think, oh, that'd be really cool, and then I think, no, because you know what it's like when you have kids. When you everybody, what does everybody tell you when who has kids here, right? Everybody says, "Oh, enjoy it while they're young. It goes so fast." And you think, "Are you kidding? I'm exhausted. I just want this to be over." Your first kid, and building real estate, by the way, is very similar to this. Your first kid, you sterilize everything. Your second kid, you wash it. Your third kid, their pacifier falls on the floor. You pick it up, lick it, stick it back in their mouths. It ain't gonna kill them. So, your clients, how you deal with people and interact is not really that dissimilar from that.
Yeah.
So.
Yes.
Yeah.
What was the idea when you got into this industry? Obviously, You knew that you liked to work with people, but what did you do? Where did you get the clients? How did you reach out to them? What was your business model at the time?
So when I first got in real estate, honestly, I do think that I think training has evolved. I think conventional brokerages are being forced to step up to try to meet the kind of things that brokerages like Real offer. And, Real really does stand out, in my personal opinion, above the crowd. For those of you that don't know, I came to Real in the middle of December last year in 2025. And I spent 6 months looking at various different models. And I pretty much had my mind made up probably in the late summer, but I was very intentional about when I came over. But when I first got in real estate, the kind of training that we have access to now, it just wasn't prevalent. I first joined on with a Remax brokerage, and nothing against Remax. They're a fantastic brand. And I had some wonderful mentors there who I truly believe I wouldn't be where I am without them. But if I hadn't had them, it would have been different because nobody told me about business plans. Nobody told me about CRMs. I didn't have a website for a couple of years. Um, where my clients came from, because you might think, oh, geez, Kath, with coming from the background you came from, you would have had clients coming out your ears. I had a huge network, but it was everywhere. Like it was spread out everywhere. So to me, the most important thing that any agent can do, and it doesn't change no matter where you are, it was also my biggest frustration during the pandemic because, like, I was doing between 35 and 50 transactions a year as a solo agent with one part-time admin, and I was exhausted. And doing what I'm about to say was very difficult during those busy, busy times. But what I did from the beginning was I made a list. Everything starts with a list. If you remember nothing else about today, remember this. It all starts with a list. And I went through every contact I had in my phone, every Excel spreadsheet I had, and I went down, and anybody that any there's, for some reason there's always one or two or however many people you think, I know I'm not going to communicate with those people. But I sent out letters. Now, we're 13 years ago. We have more modern systems, but I sent out letters, I sent out emails, and I just basically said to everybody, hey, I'm starting a new career in real estate. I'm very excited about it. These are the areas where I'll be selling real estate. And if you or someone you know are looking to buy or sell in this area, I would love to help you. If you're not in this area, I've met some phenomenal colleagues who I trust the way they do business, and I would really love to connect you with them. And I right off the hop, I started by putting myself out there, but also by asking for referrals because I had friends that were 2 and 3 and 4 hours away, people in the States. Um, I won't say that it came fast, like the first 6 months. I don't think I did a single transaction, but by the end of the year, of my first year, I did almost 100,000 GCI in a market where average sale price was in the 300s. And that was the list, always building and honing the list. And I started out, I didn't have a CRM. I started out with an Excel spreadsheet, had the names, the phone numbers, the emails, and the addresses. I was snail mailing, I was emailing, I was calling. Um, and I'm not that person. Like I attend sessions. I think at Velocity, somebody talked about how, they have like, I don't know, what did they say, Derek? Like 12 touch points a month or something. And my like I go, oh, like if I was getting 12 emails from somebody a month, I'm gonna unsubscribe. So for me and for all of you, like you'll find that place where you feel authentic. I know that I need to do more than once a month, but I might not want to do 12. You have to find what works for you. So I just kept letting everybody know. And it's funny because it all started with a friend of mine in Whitby messaged me and said, my brother and sister-in-law are looking to buy a house in Barrie. And I thought, oh, let's go, it's on, it's on, it's on. And that was that was the first offer I wrote. And it was just from there, I just continued with that. In that Excel spreadsheet, I would note whatever date I emailed them. If I called them, I'd note the date that I called them. Like you have to do the work, and then you have to track the progress. And I would have a space for notes. And then I'd have, if somebody did engage, then I'd have a separate, tracking sheet just for them. I had the binder here somewhere. I was going to pull it out. Started with a binder. Like I'm going to make myself sound like a dinosaur. It's not that I didn't have a computer. It's just, I was constantly
Yeah.
going back and forth between my home office and the office at Remax. And, it just started by doing the basics over and over and over and over again.
So you started with your sphere basically and
Mhm.
organizing your sphere. And I don't think there's any shame in saying it worked for me to be on a binder. I always said, what CRM should I use? The one that you're going to end up using. And if a piece of paper is your CRM and you close transactions, that's fine. It doesn't have to be an ultimate AI setup, I don't know, something that you're never going to use and open because it's overwhelming. So whatever works. So you started with your sphere of influence. What was the other leg of business that you added? Because I assume the 50 transactions a year were coming from different areas of your business.
Honestly, they were mostly sphere, repeat, and referral. Um, for a period of time, I um, was running some ads through my website at the beginning of 2020. But I'll tell you something. I at the end of every year, I would sit down and I would look at my whiteboard. And on that whiteboard, I would have, so I'm just thinking on my whiteboard, I have active listings, I've referred out, I have prepping slash pocket listings, I have pending sales, active buyers, buyers incubating. My term is incubating. Those are people, an incubating buyer is I guess you could say kind of like a pocket listing. Conditional sales, and then I have another section. So the end of every year, I would look at that and I would sort of see what was in those different sections of the whiteboard. And at the end of 2019, for the first year ever, because I don't know if anyone can relate to this, but for the first several years, even though you're doing some business, you come into the end of the year, it's really easy to get anxiety about, you know, okay, all my deals are closing. I'm coming into Christmas time, you know, and then the nails start biting, like, oh, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? And you start January. I mean, we all start January at zero. Well, maybe not all, but we all start January at the beginning. So at the end of 2019, I was coming into 2019 and I had like multiple entries in every section of the whiteboard. So I had active listings, I had coming soons, I had prepping, I had active buyers, I had buyers under contract, I had listings under contract. And I was so excited coming into 2020. So I had these online ads set up and they were coming in from my website and I literally couldn't keep up. So I ended up shutting them off. I've done social media ads. If any of you are killing it on social media ads, I would love to talk with you personally. I personally find I'll run a social media ad just to appease my seller, just to show them here's what's happening with your ad. Because like if I run, let's say, three listing ads, I'll see some of the same people click through. Some of them are just doing it to cost you money. Some of them are just doing it because they're curious and they just want to see. So I personally, I can't say I've never gotten any deals because I had one lead come through my website where I ended up selling their place. I ended up helping them buy a place, and their place that I sold, I ended up double ending. So, but that's like one out of 13 years of doing it. So for me, most of my business has been sphere, repeat, and referral. And then the odd, I've done some lead sources too. Like there's companies out there you can join, like Agent Pronto and things like that. But they want 35% referral fee. They don't qualify the ads. And, it's great. They're gravy if you can get them. Some of them are good, some of them are not so good, but mostly sphere, repeat, referral.
God. And I wanted to ask you because one day we were doing one of our private training and you were in the car and we caught you right when you were going actually at one of your listings that sold. And I'm bringing that up because you've been so successful in this business, 50 transactions a year, and yet you go and do the just sold, just listed in order to get more business from listings sold.
100%. I really, I go into these sessions and I hear them talk about, how what you can do with AI. And I right now have my techie son getting Claude Cowork all set up for me to make my time in the office more efficient. But I really believe that that people hire us because they trust us. And most people, maybe not all, but most of my clients anyways, they really want that interaction. So I do a lot of the basics. I probably do some stuff that maybe is not the most effective use of my time, but it builds loyalty and it that then builds referrals. So I think for every agent, you have to figure out what's authentic to you because honestly, what might work for me or Lindsay or Derek or Raina or, Raina, I'm not saying that right. I'm so sorry. I'm not pronouncing your name right. So, but what might work for any of us, it's going to be different for someone else. I think the key is to understand what builds brand and what builds a business, and then figure out how implementing that feels authentic. Because I could watch what Andrea does on social media, or I could, watch what the Lee Lander group does, and then I can realize, well, that's not going to be authentic to me. I have door knocked, and I've had great success door knocking, but I hate it. I don't do it anymore. It just doesn't feel right. So
What
yeah.
are the activities? Like, give me three non-negotiable activities that you feel like they're driving the majority of your deals right now.
So three non-negotiable activities would be regular personal contact. As much as for example, I'll send a seller reports with their numbers and recaps, etc. And then I schedule a call to touch base with them about it. And whether that's a 5 minute call or a 30-minute call, I will time limit. I'll let them know, we're going to schedule a 30-minute call. And if it only takes us five, that's great. If it takes us 30, you've got me for whatever you need. Um, and that's my time to answer their questions because otherwise they're emailing. So regular ongoing contact is a non-negotiable. Um, Prospecting is a non-negotiable. And I can tell you honestly, in the years when my prospecting has uh, sort of suffered a bit because I've been so busy, I see that in the following year's business. Like I, I listed a property 2 summers ago. I helped them buy. I think I was in my very first year of real estate, and I love these people. They're so loyal, but have you ever had a client where, you just connect so seamlessly, like they just feel like long lost family, and then another client where it's like the awkward cousin, like sort of thing, like you get along with them. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Like it's just hard to find. I'm a connection person. When I talk to somebody, I'm looking for a way to genuinely build a connection with them, because if you can build a connection, you will build a client for life. So these folks, they were very different. So how I built that connection with them was just strictly service and loyalty. Well, every year I do mail outs. So it's part of my prospecting. And I mail out an item of value, and I mailed out these really cool thermal bags to all my past clients. And they called me because they saw a house online that they fell in love with. They wanted to buy it. They wanted to sell their place. I went to meet them, and the bag I mailed them was sitting on their ottoman because they take it out with them when they go grocery shopping. So every time they go grocery shopping, they're staring at my name. So I'm not just mailing out for the sake of mailing out. I'm not sending here's your market update when I send something out in snail mail, which I have done 4 times a year. Last year, I only did twice. This year, I'll be back to 4 times a year. So the personal contact, the prospecting is a non-negotiable. Um, what else is a non-negotiable for me? Because everything is kind of a non-negotiable. Um, I
What
would
was
say
in part of the prospecting, other than mail out different things during the year? What other activities are part of prospecting?
so. A long time ago, I set up Exact Contact as my CRM. And the reason why I did Exact Contact was because it's $39 a month. I looked at all these other bigger ones that, and you hear so much. I'd love to do Follow Up Boss as a solo agent. I don't know that I can justify the cost for that. But I set up exact contact, and Andrea said it in the beginning, the best CRM is the one that you're going to use. And I used it. I put my database in there. Whenever I was talking to a potential prospect, potential client, if I'm talking to an existing client, I open up my exact contact and whatever we're talking about, I write the date in and what we talked about. And it might have been at Velocity might have been somewhere else where I recently heard somebody say that. When you're talking to somebody, prospecting them or they're a past client, make sure you're writing down what you talked about. So the next time you talk to them, you can bring that up. So, as a result of that, somebody's had a baby. I put it in my calendar that they had a baby. Depending on where they are in that cycle, I'll send them a card or I'll send them flowers when the baby comes. And um, I kind of, I picked up a client who had in the past listed with another agent, but she was in my community and I was just doing general prospecting. Somebody said to her, "You need to speak to Cathy." I had a conversation with her. She had a baby. I sent her flowers when she had the baby. She's now done three more transactions with me. I sent her flowers when she had a baby. So it it
The,
it's
I wanted to just add something that you just said to record the meetings and have that put it into your CRM so you know what you've talked to. And at Velocity, there was an app which is called Grain that you can download in your phone, and all the conversation will be recorded, and they make like a summary of what was discussed. So in this way it's much easier than you have the conversation, then you have to take off or not be present in the moment while you're talking with your client. You take notes. At least with this app you can record the meeting and you can have the notes at the end of the meeting. So you can do, and my understanding was that you can actually connect this to your CRM and directly put it into the conversation. So something that I thought to look into it. Um, Sorry, I
the
interrupted
caveat the
you.
caveat to that would be making sure your clients or whoever you're talking to knows that it's being recorded. You actually don't even need the app, to be honest with you. On If you're on an iPhone, there's a way to
Yeah,
just record the conversation.
correct.
So
Yeah.
um,
The
I have
only,
I
I
have
think
done
the
that.
reason for the app was that actually records everything that happens on your phone. It's not something that creates that noise or that voice, hey, the recording is right now happening. It records everything that's happening with your phone as long as you open the app. And that could happen, for example, you're in a listing appointment and you want to record the conversation for the sake of looking back of what was right, what was wrong, how you want to pivot in your presentation. So I haven't done it yet, but look into it. I'm interested in looking into it to see if that works that way or something that it needs permission. Anytime we record someone, it should be with asking permission. But I don't know, to be honest. I'll look into it. My understanding was that it records your phone.
I mean, definitely it would make it helpful because I found even when I was responding to leads, like through my website, CRM, stuff like that, if I'm driving when I'm returning calls, it does mean that I have to remember what we talked
Correct.
about or, stop when I'm stopped, write it down. So there's a lot of value in that. And certainly, a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about is very simple. That a lot of the stuff that I've done to get to where I am, it wasn't high tech. I mean, I started using Chat GPT a couple of years ago now to write listing descriptions. I used to sit and write listing descriptions and it would take me hours because I really believe that a monkey can point out that there's a new air conditioner and a new furnace and a new roof. What I'm trying to do with a listing description is I am trying to paint a picture for a buyer of the lifestyle that they could anticipate when they're in that home. So there's definitely so many ways that tools and AI can make all of this easier. But I think the thing that I would want to drive home to all agents is that I don't know about you, for those of you that have your videos on, if you can just nod yes or no, does anybody ever feel like tools, information, and sales pitches for tools that are available to you come at you like at the speed of light? And you're
Yeah.
just looking around going, what is the deal? And I think that it creates analysis paralysis. I think that a lot of agents get so stuck thinking, I can't do this, I can't do. It is so basic. Get yourself a system. I don't care if it's an Excel spreadsheet. I don't care if it's exact contact. I don't care if it's FUB. And to be honest with you, right now, we're going to phase out of exact contact and we're going to move in. possibly to Lofty because I was looking at Lofty and FUB finally, because of the compatibility to communicate and link to everything. So I just went to my techie son and I said, look, like he lives in Ottawa. This is his job. I said, just do me a favor. This is what I need. Figure out how to do it and send me the bill. Like,
Mhm.
so I just want to be talking to the people. And I think that's the non-negotiable. I don't believe AI will ever replace agents because people
Mhm.
need that contact. I think people who want to sell their own home will find a way to sell their own home. And I've sold homes that people have listed themselves and then been unsuccessful with. Um, and I've seen people sell their homes successfully. It depends on the location, it depends on the market, it depends on the like so many different factors. So I think our number one thing is to always be talking to people.
And I was about to ask you, what do you think is the highest paid skill as a real estate agent? And I think you
Talking to
just,
people.
yeah, okay.
Talking to people. And you've heard it said at a million meetings, like, I will never ever put down an admin, or minimize their job because a good admin who does their job well is worth their weight in gold. Um, but the number one thing that we need to be doing is talking to people. And when I say talking, like sometimes talking to people also means being present and not talking. It also means listening. And there's nobody, well, I'll just speak for myself. I have made lots of mistakes building every business I've ever built. The key isn't about the fact that you made the mistake. The key is what can you learn from this? And even when you don't make a mistake, even when you've done nothing wrong, but it doesn't go the way you want it to, like I listed this property. I don't have time to tell you the whole story, but basically the seller wouldn't listen about pricing and it was overpriced. It wasn't like 100,000 overpriced, but it was enough overpriced that it was going to affect it. So we had a deal. At this point, we would do a reduction. They got an offer. The offer was 85 or $89,000 under list, but it was about 50,000 under where it should have been. It was 39,000 overpriced. And the seller did exactly what I told them not to do. They got upset, they got offended, they got whatever. And then they did not negotiate the offer in good faith, and the buyer walked away. And a year and a half later, the property came off the market just above the offer that they got. And then 6 months later, they listed the property again, but this time after telling me how much they loved me and how I did nothing wrong and worked so hard and spent all this money, brokers opens, regular open houses, like all kinds of paid advertising, including high-end marketing. They listed with another agent under the number that they got on that first offer. And then it sold 7 weeks later to a buyer that I had shown it to last spring. And that buyer went through the listing agent because the listing agent reduced the commission to do both ends. And when that happened, and I don't care who you are and how much business you do, can you just show me your hand if you've ever had something similar happen? Ever had a client like do that? So I like it stung. I don't care how much money you make, it stings when you put it stings and it stinks when you put so much time into something and you invest it. So what I did was I stepped back and I said, okay, what's my takeaway from this? What do I learn? How do I get better? And I think that's the number one struggle that we have when we're self-employed, when something doesn't go to plan. And if you haven't had anything not go to plan yet, you haven't done enough deals, or you haven't served enough people, or you haven't been in the business long enough. Because even Lindsay, I won't out you, Lindsay, but I know one of your first clients was like brutal to you. I remember having a conversation with you about how she treated you. Now, Lindsay's a pro, so the only reason I knew about it is because we were colleagues, and she called me and said, "Hey, can you give me some perspective?" And I have that too. There's times when I call Lee. There's times when I've called Andrea. There's times when I call my trusted colleagues and I say, I just need some perspective. I need to get out of my own head. So I think that's another non-negotiable. And we have it in spades at Real Broker. I think we need to have somebody, or more than one person who we really trust and respect. So when we're in our own heads, we can go to that person for perspective to get out of our own heads, because this constant coming at us all the time with stuff, I think it really makes our job difficult. If you cut all that noise and you come back to what's important. And I will be the first to admit that there's been times when I've either been overloaded or I've been spending time doing stuff that I shouldn't be doing. Um, we all go through those cycles. So it is a non-negotiable to always be looking at everything that goes on around us and say, how do I use this to get better? How do I use this to further my business?
I think and you said it so well, we underestimate the emotional toll that this business, it's sales. If you're in sales, you have to be aware of what it means and what it takes to have the right mindset, the right people around you to support you. And a lot of time, and I bring that a lot in my coaching sessions, is we bring that a lot into our personal lives with our spouses, which are not in sales, which are not even on commissions with their jobs. And it's very hard for them to understand. It's almost like when you bring something like that, they're like, oh, so you're giving up? No, I'm just venting about the situation, but it sounds like this is terrible. So having that support around you to talk with people that totally understand and, like you said, give you a perspective and support, it's so important.
Well,
Um,
and there is a difference between living in that mindset or space and just sort of processing it. Like everybody processes things different. Some people are tactile learners, some people are visual learners. Like I'm the kind of person that if I'm really frustrated, either I have to go into a closet by myself or to my husband or somebody I trust and just go get it out for a minute. And then I'm like, yeah, let's go. Like,
yes, yeah.
so, and it was funny because I've been bringing a challenging transaction sort of to the finish line. And yesterday I was like, I going about my day and I was really frustrated. And then last night I was talking to the client and I got off the phone and my husband looked at me and he's like, it's like there's two different people living there.
And it's so true. It's so true. And even more so, I think in the last 3 to 4 years, as the transactions are more difficult, the conversations are more difficult. The skills that we need right now are very different than 10 years ago. And I wanted to ask you, what do you feel like you're doing different? Because 3 years ago, everybody could have been a real estate agent. You go and you drive with a client, they will buy in the first showing. You have a listing, you just put whatever price you want, is going to go over anyway. There's no price skills in there, communication skills, everything. We were very much the admin staff years ago. Now we're salespeople. Now we need to have the skills of salespeople. What are you doing different today than in your listing presentation, for example, or a buyer client than you were doing 3 years ago?
So for me, I don't really think I'm doing anything different. I think I just have a little more time to hone things. Like, so first of all, your listing presentation should never be static. Like my listing presentation during a seller's market is totally different than my listing presentation during a buyer's market. And I know I've recently been like reworking my listing presentation and sort of tweaking it to make sure that certain expectations are set up because, you know, I I went on this, I talked to these people about listing their home on and off for like a year and a half. And then they had me back in and they said, we just want to let you know we're interviewing we've nailed it, we've broken it down between you and another salesperson. And, we think you're both great. We're blah, 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 blah. We're just going to decide who's best for us. And in this case, they went with the other agent who was part of a really big team. I'm not going to say the team name, but a really, really big Simcoe County team. And they said to me, we think that the only reason why she's better suited to do the listing is not because she'll, be a better agent because you're just as good as her. That this was their words. But her team, because they're so big, will have a pool of buyers. And we think what's going to sell our house is the fact that they have a pool of buyers. And Derek's smiling because he knows what's coming, only from the context of this. But nobody has a pool of buyers. I don't care how big the team is. Nobody has a pool of buyers just sitting around waiting for every house that comes on the market. Yes, the Leelander Group, who is a big group, and they do a lot of business. They might have buyers looking for a particular type of property and they go find it, but nobody just has that full cache of buyers. And so I think it's so important to set up expectations. So the big difference now in my listing presentation, I'm not doing anything different in how I approach it. I'm just making sure I'm targeting that information to set the expectations up. And the one thing I love about AI, I'm just really getting into Claude, and I think that's going to replace chat for me. But I have the paid chat and I've used it so much, it now knows me. It's trained. So, like, even that situation I told you about that seller, I loved the email. Hope this doesn't affect our friendship. No, it doesn't affect our friendship because we clearly weren't friends. So, there's nothing to affect. I didn't respond that way. I responded with, I wish you the best. And I just left it at that. But then I went into Chat GPT and I chat became my therapist. I was like, so this is what happened. This is this. How could I have done this better? What do I need to do different? Like, and the first answer came back, if somebody's not willing to listen from the start, they're not going to be willing to listen. Like, and there's an expression that says when somebody shows you who they are, believe them. And it's hard to do with clients because by a show of hands, how many of us, business, with the exception of a small handful of people, business is down. And so we want all those transactions and we want to believe that we can bring that transaction across. And so sometimes we convince ourselves that we can convince this seller. And I'll tell you, a seller convinced against their will is of the same mind still. They are not changing their mind until something. And in the case of that particular seller, not only did he end up getting it ended up selling for 815. I did the math. By the time it's all said and done, if he'd have let me do my job when I got that first offer in, I said to him, I know I can get that offer up to 885, 890. If he had let me do my job from the start, he would have walked out with $80,000 more in his pocket than what he walked out with. But in addition to that, he bought a house conditional on the sale of his house that got sold out from under him. And that's another whole big story. They wanted that house so badly, but they still wouldn't listen. So I think the big thing now is just going in the door and being honest. And you know what? I don't know if anyone's ever had this happen, but I did a listing appointment a couple weeks ago, and I was respectful and kind, but honest with the seller about what she could expect price wise. And she called me 3 days later and blasted me and said I was rude and disrespectful and didn't respect how hard she worked to keep her home all these years. And I just said to her, it hurts my heart as a human being that you feel that way, but it doesn't change the facts. I'd love to serve you, if you feel that's the right fit. And if you don't, I'm okay with that too.
Yeah.
Because there's also a lot of people out there hurting. Anybody ever become someone's kicking post? And that is why we need our tribe. So the system is so important to go in being respectful and honest. And that listing presentation has to change. And, I think I'd love to have somebody do a master class on how to break a seller's heart, like how to tell them that their house isn't worth what they think it's worth. And it's, I have some really good friends of mine who are with Revel Realty, and we talk all the time. And we were saying it's almost, in some areas, it's almost better to be the second agent in. Like I work in a market where
100%.
I niche down in a golf course. I sell all over Simcoe County, but I niche down in a golf course where I do 85% of the resale real estate by MLS statistics. And I worked my ass off to get that. But and my brain just went blank with what the point I was going to tell you about that. Oh, I was saying that like during the pandemic, when people were getting like 30, 40 offers on properties and they were selling 100,000 overpriced, that didn't happen in the golf course. Our prices went up, but we didn't have multiple offers. I had one listing where I had multiple offers, and I wrote two of the buyer offers. And then there was a third buyer offer, and the third buyer offer is the one that got it. But that, like, we didn't have that. So I was still doing all of those basics. So whatever's happening now, I saw an agent in Mississauga. I love her dearly. She was posting, she did an open house on this property and they had four offers. And she was like, if anyone tells you that the market's not hot, don't believe them. No, the market
Really
is not
depends. Yeah.
hot everywhere.
Yeah.
So, and that's the other thing is that you have to really just guard yourself on social media because, you know, it's everybody's highlight reel. Social media, nobody, well, I used to say nobody gets on social media and starts telling you how shit he is. But some people do. And then when they do, what do? You go past them because you're like, oh, I don't need to hear this. I don't want to hear this.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you got to kind of guard what goes in.
Yeah. To answer your previous, thank you for sharing this, but to answer your question, for sure, we can do a between me and Lee, I think we can let everybody know how we like to fire clients. We have no problem with that, and I think Lee has such a artistic way of doing it. I would love to for everybody to hear her out and how she does it, and how at the end of the day, especially in the market like this, it's the right thing to do. You don't want, I may hurt your feelings, but that, like you said, that's the truth. Numbers don't lie. I'm not going to take an overpriced listing in a market like this, in which I could risk to just have expenses.
Well, and that's where the girls and I were talking and saying in some cases, and that's where I was going when I started on that story. I teach by telling stories, but we were saying it's in some cases it's almost better to be the second agent in. Like
100%, a
it's,
100%.
and
And it
it's
happens
tough.
more and more. It happens more and more to let people give it a try with the agent that's willing to tell what they want to hear. Ends up not selling. Yes, sometimes they reduce the price with that agent and end up selling with the price that you suggested. And sometimes they do come back. They fire that agent and they bring you back. And you take your chances, but it's definitely better to, I think, besides the fact that you may end up not selling that property, is the inconvenience and the mindset that you end up having by having week after week conversations with unrealistic people that really agents don't pay attention to. What would that mean for me to have that mindset? How would that affect me into continue prospecting, getting more business by staying with the unqualified an unrealistic buyer or seller? I wanted to ask you, because you mentioned something very important. 80% of your business comes from one particular area that you develop and you nurtured. How that happened, and how do you maintain it right now?
So it's not that 80% of my business comes from that niche. It's that in that niche of 220 homes, I do over 85% of the
God,
resale real estate.
God,
And so I just started prospecting. Like I literally, it started with one listing. Now, I mean, I live in the community, but I know lots of real estate agents that live in communities where there's 200 homes around them, and they don't necessarily sort
prospect
of
that area.
dominate that community. And there's lots of other agents, within a radius of here that are great agents, but I made it my business to understand what goes on in that community. And I mean, you could pick any community. I'll use Simcoe County, where you are, whether it's Innisfil or Barrie. I mean, you could pick Allendale, you could pick Midhurst, you could pick any area. You could pick Holly, and you could niche down and learn. So I made it my business to learn about the community during the pandemic. There was a lot of people that didn't want to go out, weren't doing anything, and I was still on the road nonstop. So I'd say, I'm going on a grocery run. Anybody need groceries? And I'd have 6 grocery orders, and I'd go get groceries and drop them off at their door. And yes, during that time, I was doing a lot of business, but um, from 2019 to 2020, in 2020, my business grew 400% over 2019. So I was pretty busy and I was dropping off groceries. So, but also at the same time, in fairness, there was nothing else you could do. So I was like, well, why not drop off groceries? But I think it's not about dropping off groceries. You shouldn't all go out and try to drop groceries off. It's like find a need and fill it. Is there an information need? Is there like what is that need? And you know, it's it really is just about doing the basics. It all comes back to again the basics of being in front of people and being present. And by the way, be prepared that when you're, and I know Lee as the Queen of East Gwillimbury, Lee and I have talked about this in context before, that when you are niching down or when you are filling needs and when you are very present. And we see influencers talk about it on social media. Not everybody's happy for you. Not everybody's on your bandwagon. And, that's okay. I do something unique. In the golf course community, I take over 4 backyards and bring in a sound company and bring my band in, and I do a 3-hour concert. Um, if any of you are singers and you want to get up and sing on stage with me, come on over.
Oh,
But
we would love to
um,
hear you. I don't.
but So there again, so you have to look at you and say, what are my skills? And if you're not sure what those skills are, go to your colleague who knows you and say, what do you think my unique skills are? Because
Mhm.
sometimes, like, you know, I- the backyard party I did started out for one reason, and then the next year I wasn't going to do it again. And everybody's like, "Are you going to do the party?" And I'm like, "No, I don't like. I feel like I'm kind of forcing myself on everybody." And they're like, "Are you kidding me? Like we had so much fun. We had 200 people show up with their lawn chairs and their cooler bags, and people were dancing in the grass, and I had a wireless mic running through the crowd, and everybody." When I think when people see you as a real person, um, that also builds trust, and you don't need all of the business.
Yeah.
You just need enough business to feed your pipeline. So again, everything comes back to the basics. When agents stop doing the basics, which is getting in front of people, talking to people, and continuing to build that databases are not static. They're moving. Sometimes people are in the hot prospect category, and sometimes they're in the incubating category, and sometimes they're in the passive category, like however you label that. But and the other thing I would say, one thing I didn't talk about that I've done from day one from my past life, I did it in music and I do it in real estate, is scheduling and time blocking. Like, again, help me out, folks. Anybody ever find time gets away from them and they go, how is it the end of the day already? Like, if I don't time block, I end up frustrated. I end up missing stuff. So I have my calendar, and I set that up and I time block my prospecting. And you know what? The busier you get, the harder it gets to do that, and
Yeah.
the easier it gets to go, I'll catch up on it later.
Mhm.
And I've made that mistake. Like I
Yeah.
think I've made every mistake that you can make building real estate, sometimes twice just to make sure that it was still a mistake. And I'm living proof that somebody can make lots of mistakes and still be successful because I don't need all the business. I just need some of the
I'm
business.
not good at this.
So,
And in regards to this, and I want to be mindful of your time. Obviously, it's almost 11, but in regards to this area specifically, and you participate within the community, you help the community. Are there a couple of things, for example, from a marketing perspective? Do you go like market fairs, events? You sponsored this neighborhood. Do you send any marketing materials, flyers to nurture this area, or just what it comes from one client to another?
are you talking about my niche that I
Yeah,
really
the
niche?
niche
Yeah.
where you live. Yeah.
So I used to in the very beginning, in the very beginning, I made a newsletter and it was only 220 homes. So I would do we have really a peak season that starts in May and kind of winds up in October. And it's not that stuff doesn't sell between November and April, but there's a lot of people that have second homes
Yeah.
here. So during peak season, I started doing a newsletter and I would put something informational, something helpful. And I even did the stupid, dreaded, like, here's a cool recipe thing. And you'll hear some people go, don't do the recipes. And other people are like, do the recipes. And you're like, don't do the recipes. And you're like, I'm so confused. So I was just, and I folded those and I got these little door knocking bags. And between myself and my part-time admin, like we just walked around the community and stuck them on everybody's door handle every month. And the reason I did that wasn't because I was too cheap to use Canada Post. It was because I was trying to niche into just that market and I couldn't do just a Canada Post mailer to that market.
Right.
So, like, if you've got in your geographical area, if you want to farm a certain area, you might be able to get Canada Post just to deliver to that area. If not, like, trust me, going and putting door hanger bags on the doors is way easier than door knocking. And by the way, when I door knocked, I had a letter that said, hey, this is who I am. I knocked on your door today because I wanted to chat with you about what's happening in the community. I'm sorry that I missed you. If you'd like to chat, I'd love to connect. And I don't know, I can't remember what else was in it. I've got the letter in my database here, and I put that in a door hanger bag. So if I knocked and nobody was home, I hung that on their door so that they knew I was there. I didn't just stick a business card in so that somebody could say, oh, just another realtor. I don't do it really anymore, honestly, because when you drive into the community, when you make the left-hand turn to come in, you can only be doing 20 kilometers, and there's a 12-foot by 6-foot billboard with me on it.
Uh,
And then it doesn't matter where you go. Right now, there are 11, 11 for sale signs in the community, and I have two off-market listings. So it now does the work for me. Couple of years ago on a long weekend, there's a golf course here. Somebody drew a very thin mustache on my billboard. So one of my past clients called me and said, Kathy, there's a mustache on your billboard. And for like 60 seconds, I was like furious. Who would do that? Do they not know how much these billboards cost? And then first, I checked myself and I thought, this is hilarious. So I ordered fake mustaches off Amazon. And I put
that's
on a fake
amazing.
mustache and I went to the billboard and I took a selfie of myself with the billboard. I had like 5,000 views on this story and the reel that I put up about it. I had more engagement making fun of my own billboard.
Yeah.
So, you know,
No, I love
it's
it. I love
but
it.
outside of the niche, because the niche has its good and its bad, but outside of the niche, it still comes back down to the list, the database, the touch points, and the biggest struggle if you're really, really busy, like I don't like the word busy. If you're a really productive agent or just a busy person, it's hard to get out into those community events, get yourself where you can be
Yeah.
seen,
Yeah.
interact with people. And the other thing is everybody will come at you for money. Everybody will come at you to sponsor this and sponsor that. I've had to be really, really intentional. Like, and Lee talked about it. I do the same thing. I do my budgeting at this time. So,
Yeah. I just want to wrap it up. So, sphere of influence, you do have an area that you call it farm. It's you're not door knocking anymore. It was something that you started with, but now it's the marketing that took over that. And between the billboards and they see your for sale sign, it does the job. And the most important, which you keep bringing it up, which I believe in it 100%, is the fact that it always comes down to talking with people and connecting with them. Thank you so much, Kathy. I know it's 11 o'clock. We'll just have 2 minutes. If anybody has any questions, please unmute yourself and ask Kathy now. And until somebody unmutes themselves, I'm trying to see if anybody's unmuting themselves. I always forget about this. So this time I said I'm not going to forget where people can actually that don't follow you right now or have your contact can go and connect with you.
I mean, my phone number is everywhere. Oh, that's another quick thing, folks. I see so many agents that do not put their cell phone number on their listings, do not put their cell phone number. Do not be a secret agent. And I've heard agents say, I don't want to answer calls from agents who don't read the listing. I've done so many deals with cooperating agents who didn't read the listing and bothered me with stupid questions, but their clients bought the listing. So literally, we get paid enough money to answer those questions. But my phone number's everywhere. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook. I hate social media. If I didn't have to do it for real estate, I wouldn't do it. Um, but
Thank,
I'm really, and I'm always open to, like, if anybody ever needed anything, I'm an open book for sharing information.
thank you. Thank you,
Thank you,
Kathy.
Kat.
Yeah, and yes, you are. Thank you so much for sharing with us. Anybody that was registered will receive the recording, and I'll put the information with her number and social media. Go and follow her. Thank you so much, Kathy. Have an amazing week, everyone, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank